my god, am I gonna give this 5 stars? I literally almost just like burst into tears. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're going to be doing a very exciting reading vlog because I'm going to be reading books that you think that I will give 5 stars. I did a video like this last summer. I can have the last time I did this link down below, but it was such a fun reading vlog, and I actually did find a few new 5-star favorites. So I thought I would do another round this year. Since you know my taste so well, I asked for some recommendations on my YouTube community post, and then I also went to my Instagram stories and asked for some recommendations over there, and y'all really came through with the recommendations. I'm going to be reading 5 different books for today's video. The first book that I'm going to be reading in this vlog is going to be Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall, because this was recommended an overwhelming amount of times. It was recommended 8 different times, and I was really surprised but also not really surprised to see this book recommended that many times because I've been hearing about this book non-stop this year. This is a new release book that kind of falls into like the historical fiction, literary fiction genre. I actually don't know too much about this, but I've been hearing such incredible things that I ended up getting a copy from Book of the Month because I was so interested in checking it out. The next book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog is going to be Victorian Psycho, which was recommended 3 different times. This is one that I've kind of had my eye on for a while. I've also been hearing a lot about this book from some of my friends. This one is a horror novella. I believe it's only about like 150-ish pages. And this is another one that I think is also kind of historical. I think it takes place in a Victorian, setting. I don't really know much about this one either. All I know is that we're following this woman who becomes like a nanny to these young children, and then she's a little bit unhinged. I'm also going to be reading the book You with a View by Jessica Joyce, which this is a romance book that I've been really curious about for a long time, so I'm really glad that a few of you mentioned it because this is actually from the same author as the book The X-Vows, which is like one of my top favorite romance books that I've read this year. And this one is that author's debut romance, which just has me so excited because of how much I loved The X-Vows. Like, I'm almost positive I'm gonna love this one too. This one says 2 former high school enemies must reunite for a road trip inspired by their grandparents' broken engagement. So that sounds like it could be a fun time. I'm not always the biggest fan of like road trips in books, but if it's Jessica Joyce, I will be reading it. I'm also gonna be reading this one called The 3 Lives of Cate K. This one got mentioned 2 different times as well. This is a book that's been, on my radar. I obviously do own a copy of it myself, so I was hoping to read this at some point. I've been hearing some really great things about this one this year. I know that Reese Witherspoon just had this as a book club pick earlier this year, so that definitely piqued my interest in it. I've heard that this one has 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo vibes, which is initially what made me want to pick it up because I'm like, what do you mean? I love Evelyn Hugo. This one says an anonymous best-selling author reveals the secrets from her past and why she's been on the run. And then lastly, there were a few different books that got recommended one time, but they were a few books that I was really interested in checking out, and I ended up deciding to go with The Blue Book of Nebo. And this one was only recommended the one time, as I mentioned, but this is a book that I've been curious about for a while. And the reason why I was excited to check out this book is because my friend Kayla from Books and Lala, she actually featured this book as like one of her top favorite books of last year. It says it paints the eerie picture of society's collapse and a tender portrait of the relationships that persist after life as we know it disappears. So we follow like a mother and a son, and the story's kind of taking place after the end of the world. It just sounds like it could be right up my alley. So I was able to get this book from my library, and this is going to be the 5th and final book that I'll be reading for this vlog. I am very excited about this selection of books. I feel like we could really have some winners on our hands here with these. But before we do jump into the video, I just wanted to take a second to thank today's video sponsor, which is a new sponsor on this channel, and it's Wild Grain. And I am so excited to be working with Wild Grain because as a huge lover of bread and pasta, learning about Wild Grain has been pretty life-changing for me because Wild Grain is the first bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, artisanal pastries, and fresh pastas. Because you know what I love? Sourdough. But you know what I don't love? Is trying to make it myself. Like, what a nightmare, me in the kitchen. But with Wild Grain, they make it so convenient because all of their items are freezer to table ready in just 25 minutes. Not only that, but unlike the store-bought sourdough, Wild Grain uses a slower fermentation process that's going to be easier on your belly because it's richer in nutrients, and it can even help to lower blood sugar spikes. You can build your own box, and it's entirely customizable. They're constantly adding new, seasonal, and limited time items that you can try for your next box. I know that I have a sweet tooth, and I am especially excited about the cookies and the scones and the biscuits, all of the sweet little treats. What I also love about Wild Grain is that by supporting supporting Wild Grain, you're also supporting some of the best small bakeries in the country. And there are also 2 meals donated for every order to help fight hunger. So if you want to check out Wild Grain, definitely click the link down in my description and use my code GABBYREADS to get $30 off your first box, plus get free croissants for life. I don't know about you, but the idea of free croissants for life is very tempting. I'm a huge fan of croissants. Once again, that's my code GABBYREADS to get $30 off your first box. Use that link in my description, and thank you so much to Wild Grain for sponsoring today's video. And now, let's get on to the vlog. Hello, I am checking in with the first update because I just finished reading Victorian Psycho. I actually went on a walk to the library earlier today. I was able to listen to this audiobook all morning, and it's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I already finished listening to it. And this audiobook was definitely entertaining, I can tell you that. I think for my personal rating and for my personal taste, I'm probably gonna give this book around 3.5 stars. Like, I thought it was good, I thought it was really entertaining, but I'm not obsessed with this one the way that a lot of other people seem to be. I mean, this one is a horror kind of like historical fiction novel about this woman named Winifred, and she's getting this job where she's gonna be basically like a nanny to these 2 young kids. But this is a story about how like she can't really be trusted because she's trying to like fight her like violent compulsions. And this story also takes place around Christmas time as well. It's kind of like leading up to Christmas Day. I mean, something that I will say about this book is that it is so darkly funny. Like, there were some things that would happen and I'd be like, what the heck am I even reading right now? Like, that is so strange. But like, it was really funny the way that she would like word things and the way that the book was written. Like, just as an example, one of the first scenes is like she's sucking on the children's toes. Like, what is going on? So there's definitely a lot of dark humor in this book, in the writing, that really did work for me. And I thought the audiobook was really well done as well. Like, I really liked listening to this one on audio. There was also so many good quotes about, you know, like being a female and like feminine rage. You know, this is definitely one of those like feminine rage kind of stories where it's like, I support women's rights and women's wrongs. One of my favorite quotes that I had to jot down is when she said, "I fail to understand why men think talk of violence will distress women. Women who bleed all over themselves every month. Women who burst open in childbirth." Just the way that that whole section was written, I was like, damn, okay, like facts pop off. I also loved the quote when it said, "Evil can only be comprehended by evil." I thought that was really good. I thought the writing in this book was also really good. It definitely had that like Victorian Gothic kind of atmosphere to it. And this book was a very quick read because it was only 200 pages and the audiobook was only like 5 to 6 hours long, so that's why I was able to get through it so quick. There were definitely some shocking things that happened in the plot of this book that I was not expecting, especially towards the end. And there was one thing that I really liked that I was shocked by in the plot of this book. But I also think otherwise, like, this story overall is probably gonna be pretty forgettable for me. And I don't know if that's because of the like historical setting. Like, I don't tend to love historical horror. And then I also feel like as much as I loved Winifred like as a character and I loved following her, she also definitely reminded me of a lot of other, you know, protagonists that I've read about in the past. So I think this one's just around a 3.5 stars for me. I'm really glad that I finally read it though, because I've been hearing so much about this one from a lot of my friends. And I also just discovered that apparently this book is going to be getting adapted into a movie by A24. Yeah, so I just looked this up and it said A24 has acquired the domestic rights to the film and the movie's gonna star Margaret Qualley. Oh my god. You see, I feel like this might be the kind of story that will work better for me as a movie, and I can oh my god, I could see this in my head. It's gonna be brilliant. As a movie with Margaret Qualley? Wow, we are in for a special treat with the movie adaptation of this one, that's for sure. Anyway, it's about 1:15 in the afternoon. I'm getting ready to do some Patreon reading sprints at 2 o'clock pretty soon here, so I think I'm going to make a coffee and then I want to start on the next thing. I think I'm gonna start on Broken Country for the next read for this because I was able to get the audiobook checked out from my library. check in with the first update about Broken Country because I'm already about 40% of the way through the book. I just hit page 120. This book is absolutely flying. Like, I don't know if you can see how big the text is, but even though this book is about 300 pages, the audiobook is only like 8 or 9 hours long, and I'm just absolutely flying through this one. What I am really liking about this story is that we are getting a few different timelines that are happening. The main present day timeline is happening in the year 1968. We're following this woman named Beth, who's our protagonist, and we kind of learn a little bit about her. She has this husband named Frank, who's a farmer, and his brother Jimmy, I think he kind of like lives on the farm with them, or he's just kind of like always around. And then we also get flashback chapters from 1955 when this woman Beth was a teenager, and it was kind of about this summer where she fell in love with this boy named Gabriel. And something that they both had in common is that they were both writers, you know, like they both really loved poetry. And we kind of get to see in between the chapters, we flash back between 1968 and 1955, and you kind of get to see how they fell in love with each other. And then in the present day timeline in 1968, one of the first scenes that happens is that there's a dog running loose on their farm that's like going around killing a bunch of their lambs. And so the guy Jimmy, that's like her husband's brother, shoots the dog on their property. And then there's a little boy who runs up and he's like, oh my God, you killed my dog. And then that little boy is the son of Gabriel. And so when Gabriel shows up, he's like, oh my God, like this is so tragic, but like he understands why they did it. But then it kind of like puts Gabriel back in Beth's life, and she hasn't really talked to him in so many years. And so now he kind of asks like, hey, is it okay if we can be friends? And they're kind of like rekindling their friendship after so much time. And so there is a little bit of a romance happening in this story, and I actually really do like the way the romance is being written in this book. I think it's really beautiful and really like wholesome. But then something that I really like about the writing in this is that in between those chapters of 1968 and 1955, we're getting some chapters that are called The Trial that happens in 1969. And we don't really know exactly what's happening, but we just know like she's saying there was a man accused of an unthinkable crime, and she's the woman who loved two men, so there's a lot of like scandal there. She said one man was an ordinary farmer and the other one was worthy of newspapers, and everybody asks why he did it. And she said how easy it would be to tell them the truth, but like we're still lying about it. So like there's a little bit of intrigue of like what the fuck happens between these three. I really like in the 1968 chapters that you're seeing the tension kind of building between these men. And so you're constantly wondering like who's gonna be the one that does some kind of crime. Like is it gonna be Frank, her husband, or is it gonna be Gabriel, you know, like this man that she used to love? I really like how the story is being written in a way where it's really like fleshing out these relationships and you're really getting to know these characters. I just hit part 2 of the book as well. In part 2, it's like you're learning more about her past with other things that have happened with her. I feel like historical fiction can be very hit or miss for me, but I do tend to love historical fiction like this that is focused on like family and romance. This one's actually reminding me a little bit of that book, The Bright Years, which I just read earlier this year, and I loved The Bright Years. I gave that one 4.5 stars. And then in some ways, because of the like trial thing that's happening in this book, this one also is kind of reminding me of like Where the Crawdads Sing, maybe a little bit, but like I didn't really love Where the Crawdads Sing. I thought it was just okay, but this one I'm a lot more interested in because I really like the characters in this one. I love the way that the story is being written. There was one part that I felt the need to annotate because I just thought the writing here was so beautiful when it says, I float upstairs to the bed, holding the thrill of his words to me. Perhaps that's what it is, this feeling never experienced before, elation, excitement, a furious kind of happiness. Perhaps this is love. That's so adorable. I love it. I love the way that this, you know, newfound love is being described between these two teenagers. It's definitely giving me like Noah and Allie from The Notebook, like that kind of a vibe. So I'm enjoying this one so far. I'm still doing some reading sprints on Patreon right now. I'm also like finishing up laundry and just doing a few different things, but I think I'm gonna continue listening to this one. Is like 8:45 at night right now. Sorry, the lighting's kind of strange in my room because the sun is starting to go down, but I just finished reading Broken Country. This book surprised me in so many ways. Because, you know, at about halfway through the book, I was feeling really connected to this, and I was really liking the characters in this book, but I was kind of feeling like towards the middle, like the story was just a little bit slow. Like the pacing of the story was slow. I was becoming a little bit less invested in what was going on. Wow, dude, that ending, like the last like 50 to 100 pages, what the heck? I did not predict any of that. Like I thought I had this story figured out, and then I was just like, what? Like, I feel like my jaw was just hanging open. Wow, what an exceptional story. I love the way that this story was told. You know, like, I love how in between the chapters of, like, getting to know these characters, I love that we're getting scenes of the trial, and we're trying to figure out, like, what exactly is happening on this trial. I like that at the beginning of the book, you don't really know anything about the trial and, like, what is even going on and, like, who is even on trial and, like, what are they being accused of. I just love the way that this story sets that up and that it's such a mystery, and it's just really like building the tension of like what actually happened with these people. I also just feel like this author did such a good job fleshing out these characters. Like I feel like I knew these people, like they were very well fleshed out. They all felt so real to me. And even though our main girl Beth in this book, like oh my gosh, I did not agree with most of her decisions. Like a lot of the time, honestly, like I just wanted to be mad at her, but I also feel like she was such a well-written character that I still found sympathy for her even when I like disagreed with her decisions and like disagreed with what she was doing. I just feel like she was a very complex and very interesting character. And then same goes for both Frank and this guy Gabriel. Like I just really liked all of the characters in this a lot. I also really liked the brother Jimmy that was Frank's brother. I feel like he's a pretty significant character in this book as well, and I really liked him. I think the connection that Gabriel and Beth had when they were younger, it definitely reminds me of like The Notebook. They're giving me all of the Noah and Allie energy. Loved their chemistry. I feel like it was written very well, and like they were just two young kids in love who like didn't have an understanding of like how difficult their lives would become later on. There was just something so nostalgic about this, and like the way that their romance was written, it was just so cute, you know, it was so wholesome. I also think the way that this book talks about, you know, like grief in general and like going through the loss of something really significant, because our main character Beth and Frank, they actually lost their son a number of years ago. And that's not a spoiler because it talks about it in the synopsis of this book, but they had lost their own young son a long time ago. So because Beth is a, you know, grieving mother, like she had lost her little boy, and like some of the writing when it says, the pain of that, there is nothing I can say. My whole life moving forward will be filled with people who never knew my son. That is just so sad to think about. The ending of this book was just so satisfying though. It's like every little thing that you thought could come to a head at the end definitely did, in a way that it just like, it played out like a movie or something. I don't know how to explain it, but like I really hope that they do adapt this into like a movie or a TV show, because I can already envision it in my head so perfectly. And I did not expect to feel as attached to these characters as I did. Like, oh my god, am I gonna give this 5 stars? I've been debating, like I just finished this book like 10 minutes ago, and I've been sitting here feeling like, is it a 4.5 or is it a 5 star? And like part of me kind of does want to give it the 4.5 stars, just because there were some parts in the middle where I found the book to be a little bit slow. But I also like, I don't know, I might just be tempted to give this 5 stars. I don't know which book I'm gonna start tomorrow, but I will update you in the morning when I start the next thing. Decided to come down to one of my local parks this morning because I wanted to go to one of my favorite spots, Woods Coffee, but instead of just getting an iced coffee like I usually do, I ended up getting a frap which I haven't gotten one in so long. Last night, I also finished watching season 1 of Hacks, because this is a show that my mom and my sister have been pretty obsessed with recently, and they've both been trying to get me to watch it. This one's kind of like this comedy drama show about these two comedians, and I'm really liking the show. I think it's so cute. My sister actually said that the main girl on the show, Ava, reminds her a lot of me. So like that's been really fun. Anyway, I decided to come down to the park today because I thought I would sit out here in the trees and read the Blue Book of Nebo, and I just finished reading it right now. This book was very short. It's only 150 pages, and like I think I have to give this 5 stars. This was so good. I literally almost just like burst into tears sitting in this park. Like there were some people walking by, and so I didn't. I had to hold back my tears because it was so beautiful. It was so beautifully written. This book is one that I didn't know too much about before getting into it, and I feel like for the most part this book doesn't really have too much of a plot. We're basically just following these two characters. We're following a mother and a son named Rowena and Dylan, and we're just kind of following them after society has collapsed. Get the perspective of both Dylan and Rowena. We kind of like read their diary entries that they're writing in their journal, and this story is mostly taking place about 6 years after the end of the world. What I really like about this is that the timelines for this book kind of overlap, because you do learn a little bit about like what happened and what happened in the end of the world. And the reason for the end of the world was because of these nuclear disasters that ended up happening. Now the story's taking place 6 years later when her son Dylan is about like 11 or 12 years old, and it's just about them surviving and kind of like their day-to-day life and like what it looks like now. I feel like this is one of those really like quiet stories that's definitely more of like a character-driven kind of story, because plot-wise there's not a lot that happens in this book, but I feel like it has such an emotional punch because I feel like these characters are written so well. Like they just felt so human. And I love stories like this where they kind of talk about the world as it was and like the way that the world used to be. Because her son was only like 6 years old when the world essentially ended, he doesn't really have a big understanding of like what the world used to be like. So I love how she would tell them like people used to pass by each other on the streets all the time, and like in shops and in parks, and he would be like, I don't know how the world could be like that, because he really desires to just like see other people, because it's just, you know, him and his mom all the time. Like he never gets to see other people. Her kid just has the biggest heart. Like he's just so freaking sweet, and I loved reading his little sections in this book. I also love stories like this where they talk about how like you don't really appreciate what you have until it's gone. And I love how she talks about like noticing things in nature that she never noticed before. When it was talking about the world as it was before, when it says we lived without silence, the sound of the telly or the radio was a constant companion, but there was a terrible noisy silence about the way we used to live. And it says once you stop listening, you begin to hear. The chaos of rain patters on the windows, the wind singing like a siren or whispering like a lover, walking in the morning and knowing without looking that it had been snowing. You learn to hear its thickness on the ground outside. And then also you see the beauty too. Things are so much prettier than they were. Everything is the same, but we can see it all now. So I love that question of like, were these things in nature, like was it always this beautiful and we're just now noticing? Or is it because there's nothing else to distract us, like now nature just seems so much more beautiful than it was before? I just really loved the writing in this. It was just so beautiful, and the way that these two characters would also talk about their grief was something that like really pulled on my heartstrings. It was so beautiful. The ending of this book also surprised me. Like I feel like it just ended. It was so abrupt. I think you know a book is good when like I could have read another 100 pages at the end of this book. Like I kind of wanted the story to go on forever because I just felt so connected to these characters after only 150 pages. I also think it's a really good sign to me when I go in here with tabs on a library book. Like I don't know why I felt the need to annotate this. Like I almost wish I owned a copy of this book because I was wanting to annotate so much while I was reading it. I feel like in some ways too, this book kind of reminded me of that book The Road, because that's another book that kind of follows like an apocalyptic kind of situation where you're just following the relationship between a parent and the child. I think The Road, I ended up giving that one like 3 stars, but I also had to read it for college as like required reading, so I might actually enjoy this book now more if I read it now, because you know, typically when things are required reading for college, I never tend to enjoy them as much as I probably would if I had just picked it up on my own time. But it definitely has similar vibes to The Road, but I definitely feel like I connected to the characters a lot more in this one. We have another 5-star on our hands, dude. This vlog is going incredibly well. Like I could not have predicted that it would go this well. I just love this so much, and I feel like this is a story where the characters are really gonna stay with me for a while.
My headspace been weaker, it's been waiting for the right day. Like the right day ever comes, now it's Friday and nothing's changed. Mistakes that everyone is making, but I can't change.
the wind isn't too loud during this clip because it's been kind of loud. But last night ended up being such a great night because me and my sister, we went to one of our favorite Mexican restaurants, Jalapenos, and we got really big margaritas because they had happy hour last night at the restaurant. And so like my big margarita was only $5.99. And I literally could only finish like half of that margarita and I was still feeling so buzzed. I think I made a lot of like bad decisions last night because I had a giant margarita and then I had tacos. Like I had 5 carne asada tacos and I added this like pineapple salsa that they had there that was so good. And then when I got home I had chocolate cake, which was amazing, but like I had so many of my GERD triggers yesterday because like that margarita and then the tacos with the pineapple, like all of it was basically like an acid bomb. And so I don't know what I was thinking. Like the food was all so good, but then like last night I definitely started getting some of my like GERD flare-up symptoms. Ow, my ring gets caught in my hair. But anyway, I wanted to update you because today I started reading You with a View by Jessica Joyce, and I just hit chapter 13. I'm about 126 pages in, and I thought it would be perfect to like drive up to the lake today because I thought it would be nice to have a view while I read this book, You with a View. And so far, this one is going well. I'm really liking the setup for this one so far because in this story, we're following this woman named Noelle Shepherd, and she's 28 years old and she recently just lost her job, so she's moving back in with her parents. And she's also grieving the loss of her grandmother recently, who she was really close to. And so one night she's trying to figure out more about her grandma, and she posts this TikTok that ends up going viral because she's trying to find this like mystery man that her grandma seemed to be involved with. And then the grandson, this guy named Theo Spencer, reaches out to her, and she doesn't realize it at the time, but Theo Spencer is actually someone that she used to know in high school, and like they couldn't stand each other. And so now it's about how Noelle is connecting to Theo's grandfather, who was like this mysterious man in her grandma's life. And Noelle ends up finding out that her grandmother and this guy, they originally had plans to go on this honeymoon road trip and it never ended up happening. And so she decides that she wants to take this road trip that her grandma never got the chance to take because she has like the map laid out of like all the spots where they were going to go. And then this guy that's like Theo's grandfather, he says that he wants to go on the road trip with her so that he can like show her all of the spots that they wanted to go, and he can like tell her stories about her grandmother. And then of course, you know, like the grandfather also insists that this guy Theo is going to join them on the road trip as well, because of course. I don't always love romance books that involve road trips, or like any books that involve road trips in general. Like it's not one of my favorite things to read about, but I am really liking Noelle as a character so far. I'm finding her really funny and really relatable, and I'm really connecting with her, especially with like the way that she's living with her parents as like an older adult. I mean, for her reason, it's because she like lost her job recently, whereas like I'm making the choice to move back in with my parents to save some money right now. But I still do find her relatable for those things. I also think that her and Theo have some really cute banter going on, and I like that they knew each other back in the day, but they always like despised each other, so it's definitely got that like enemies to lovers kind of tension right now. And I'm also really liking the story about like Noelle trying to like learn more about her grandmother, you know, because I think that's really beautiful, and like what a great way for her to get to like connect to her on this road trip that they're gonna go on that was supposed to be like her grandmother's honeymoon. I really do like the setup of this. I'm having a lot of fun with it so far. I also love that Noelle is like really into photography and that she's going to be shooting a lot of photography on this road trip. I was really looking forward to reading this one because of how much I love the X-Vows. And so far, I don't think that I'm probably going to end up loving this one as much as I loved the X-Vows. I mean, like, I don't know if this book is giving me 5-star energy right now at this point, but I do think that so far it's giving me like 4 stars. Like, I am having a really good time with it. I guess it just depends on what happens in the next 2/3 of this, you know? Like, we'll have to see how the rest of it goes. But I don't really have any plans this afternoon. It's only about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm just planning on staying up here at the lake all day reading this one.
So strange, why it always feel like it's too late. Waiting another year and it's too late, but that's not true. It's not strange to quit another job cause it was draining, to try a different road though it's been fading in your mind cause of time.
I just got home from the lake. I wanted to take a quick shower because my hair felt really gross and like it needed it, but I just finished listening to You with a View on the way back home, and this was so cute. I mean, just comparing this one to the last book by Jessica Joyce that I loved, I don't think I loved this one quite as much. I feel like this one's probably gonna land closer to like a 4-star for me, but I really still enjoyed this one. You know, I think a big sign to me whenever it comes to like reading romance books is like, if I don't feel the need to annotate it, there's no way that it can be anything more than a 4-star, you know, because like just in comparison with the X-Vows, like I annotated the absolute crap out of this, like I couldn't even help myself, you know, and that's usually how I know when a romance is 5 stars. And even though this one wasn't 5 stars, I'm still so glad that I read this. I feel like Jessica Joyce, like there's just a way that she writes her romance books and it really works for me. And I really liked Noelle as a character in this book. I found her to be so endearing and like funny. I think the only reason why this one didn't end up being a 5-star for me is because, you know, this book is 350 pages and at times it started to feel like the story was dragging for me just a little bit, or like I was ready for things to wrap up. That could also be because of the road trip aspect of the story. Like I don't always love reading about road trips. I loved all of the moments where Noelle was learning things about her grandmother from, you know, Paul, like Theo's grandpa. Like I loved all of those scenes. I thought they were so sweet. And I also loved all of the scenes between them in Vegas. If you know, you know. But like the freaking tension between them in those scenes, I was like, oh my god, it was like leaping off the page. I think another reason though why this book didn't work perfectly for me was because the third act conflict at the end of this book, like while I do think it is, you know, pretty realistic, I also think it was just like slightly annoying because there is a bit of tension between these characters. I mean, mostly with Noelle, because like we only get Noelle's perspective in this book, so like we're really only in her head, and there is a lot of insecurity with her being like, you know, unemployed and like she lost her job and she's just kind of feeling like directionless in her life, whereas, you know, Theo is like very successful and she just sees him as like everything that she's not, you know, because he's like made the Forbes list for like the most successful people under 30. She just really starts to get insecure about those things, which is understandable, but I also think that aspect of the book was just like a little bit annoying. Like, I don't know, out of all of the third act conflicts, because like there's always gonna be some kind of conflict towards the end for like why they can't be together, and I guess with this one I just thought it was just okay, but I was like, oh my god, this story's starting to lose me a little bit, like I'm ready for things to wrap up now. But I will say that the epilogue, or like the final chapter of this book, that was so cute. It was adorable. Like I really liked the way that this book ended, so I think I feel good giving this one 4 stars, and I'm so glad that I finally read it because Jessica Joyce is a romance author that I clearly really vibe with. So like that makes me so happy. I don't know if she's coming out with anything new in the future. I think this one came out in 2023. And yeah, then the X-Vows came out in 2024. So I will have to keep my eyes peeled to see if she's publishing anything this year, because clearly this is a romance author that I just really love her stuff. I genuinely think that the X-Vows might make it into like my top 5 favorite books of the year. Like I've been debating for so many days now if I want to reread this one. Like I think I am gonna try to reread this before the end of the year because I just loved this so much. Has been a number of days since the last time I updated this reading vlog, but I did want to update you because this morning I got a chance to start reading The 3 Lives of Cate K, and I'm now on chapter 22. I'm about 106 pages in, and this story has been really surprising for me so far. I mean, I definitely knew what this book was about at one point because that's why I picked up the book to read in the first place, but since then I have definitely forgotten like the general premise of this book, so I kind of went into it not really knowing too much of what to expect. I had just seen a lot of people compare this book to Evelyn Hugo, and in the beginning of this book it's really interesting because you're following these 2 girls named Annie and Amanda, and you're following them in the 1990s and you're kind of like learning about their friendship. And these 2 girls, Annie and Amanda, they're so interesting to read about at the beginning of this because they have this friendship that's definitely veering into a little bit of like romantic territory. I'm like, oh my god, like I'm catching a vibe between them, and it feels like there's something more than friendship happening between them. And they kind of like talk about how they both want to become actresses, you know, like they both want to move to Hollywood Hollywood and make it big one day. And then pretty early on in the story of this book, you find out that something really awful happened and they've been kind of separated ever since. And so now the main story is taking place like years and years and years later, as you're kind of like finding out what happened between these two women and why they're no longer, you know, speaking to each other. And you're also finding out about like the 3 lives of Cate K, because this woman Annie ended up changing her name to Cate K, and now she's actually like the best-selling author of this like really popular book series. Then we're also following this young actress named Ryan Channing, which, can I just say, I love that name, Ryan Channing, for a female actress. Like, I think that is such a badass name. So we're also following this actress who is going to be starring in like the movie adaptation of this book by Cate K, and she is requesting to meet the author because Cate K is like an anonymous author, like nobody knows who they are except for one person. And so far it's been interesting. I think something that's a little odd though to me about this book is that, you know, the audiobook is a full cast narration. Like, they have tons of narrators on this audiobook because you are getting so many different perspectives in this, because you not only get, you know, like Annie's perspective in like the first couple of chapters talking about her time with Amanda, but then you also get like Amanda's younger sister. You get like one chapter from her as she's talking about like observing them, but then you also get like all of these random people in their lives. You get a lot of these like one-off chapters that are just told from somebody in their lives who like knows who they are, and they're just kind of like talking about the time that they spent with them. You also do get the perspective of that actress Ryan. You get the perspective of this guy named Brett, this other girl named Sydney. So like, I don't know if I'm loving the fact that we're getting so many different point of views in this book, because I actually feel like the story might be stronger if we were to just get Annie's perspective and this girl Ryan's perspective, because I think those are definitely the ones that are intriguing me the most. But we are getting a lot of chapters right now, especially from Brett and Sydney. It's kind of going back and forth between them, and I'm like, I don't know if I care as much about their perspective. I was also talking about this because I'm doing Patreon reading sprints right now, and my friend Casey was talking about how she said she thought it was weird because since you learn right at the start of this book like what actually happened between them, and like you learn about the dark past, then it's like it kind of like takes away from the tension of the book because you already know what ends up happening, which I do agree with. Like, I feel like this story could have been written in a different way where like you're kind of wondering the entire book like what actually happened between them, and it takes a long time to get there, because I do think that reveal would have been like, whoa, what? So it is kind of strange the way that this author decided to tell this story, because I do feel like the suspense is not there anymore because I already know what happened. I also think this main girl, Annie, our main protagonist that we're following, like one of these decisions that she makes, I'm like, girl, bestie, what are we doing? Why would you do that? Like, I just don't really understand her. I think she's a really messy character, but I also kind of love the fact that this book is just kind of this like beautiful sapphic romance between these two women over time. You know, like I do love a story like this, and I am really connecting with the characters and the writing, even though like I'm not totally happy with the choices that she's made, but I also think the characters are like really interesting to me. So like I am invested in the story, which I think is a good thing. I do feel like I might end up rating this book pretty high if it continues going in this direction. Like, I'm really liking the writing style, and I do feel attached to these characters already. I think right now I am doing some reading sprints on Patreon this afternoon, so I'm hoping to finish up this book today. I think I might go on a walk outside. Hey, hello, I wanted to check in because I just finished reading The 3 Lives of Cate K, and I had a really odd experience with this book because I feel like I was really invested in this book at the start of it, and then I don't know what happened, but around the halfway point, I just started to get really bored with the story because I feel like some of the things that were happening, especially in the second half of this book, it was just getting really repetitive. And like I said at the beginning, because you already know what happened between them, there was really no like tension or like suspense left in the story. This book does have an element that's like a book within a book kind of thing that's happening, and sometimes I do love that in books. But with this particular book, I just did not care to read some of those scenes that were like from the book that she was writing. I could not care less, you know, like I understood why they had to be there in a way, but I also feel like they just could have been like summarized. Like, we didn't need to actually read the scenes from the book. I thought that really like slowed down the pacing for me. I also think it was such an odd choice to have so many like random perspectives in this book. Like, I still stand by what I said earlier about how like I think this book could have been so much stronger if we just got the point of views from the two girls. Like, that's all we needed. I don't know why we needed like these these random people in their lives, like some random literary agent, like some random guy that they worked with on set, or like some random guy that worked in a cafe with them. It was just so random and it really didn't feel needed. I think the story itself was really interesting, and like I said, I did get really attached to these characters, so I did like those things about it, but I also just grew very bored with this. I think the pacing of this book is really slow, especially in the second half, and I just don't understand the reason behind some of the writing choices and some of the choices in the plot. But I am impressed with the writing style in this book because I was really impressed by the way that this author was able to like draw me in immediately and then make me feel connected to the characters. I would definitely be interested in reading more books from this author in the future because I really did connect with the writing style. It was just some of the choices made, like some of the perspectives that we got, I was kind of like annoyed with, and I was like, we don't need all of this. But the writing in the book in general, like I really did like the writing style. Something about it just immediately made me feel connected to the story and the characters, so like that's a positive. I think for me, this one is probably gonna be around a 3-star. I think it was okay, like I'm glad that I finally read it, but I don't feel super passionately about this one, at least not in the way that I wanted to with how strong of a start this one had for me. I also just love the irony of giving this book 3 stars because it's like 3 stars for the 3 lives of Kate K. It is such a bummer though to give a book like this 3 stars because it started off with such great potential, and that's always like the worst thing, to have to give a book 3 stars, because then that just means it's so mid. You know, like it could have been great, but it was just missing those key elements to make it great. So that's amazing. Thank you for the recommendation. I'm so glad that I finally got around to reading this one because it's been sitting on my shelves since January. And that is going to be a wrap on this reading vlog. I'm so glad. I feel like this reading vlog went very, very well, because even though all of the books didn't work for me, I'm so glad that I found a few that really did. And it's always so satisfying to do these reading vlogs where I'm reading books that you think I'm gonna give 5 stars and then I actually do get some 5 stars out of this reading vlog. It's amazing how well you know my reading taste, and I always really appreciate any book recommendations that I can take from you. And if you have any other book recommendations for any other books that you think I could give 5 stars to just based off of my taste in this video, then please do let me know. I am always open to any of your recommendations in the comment section. I really appreciate it. You'll have to let me know your thoughts on any of these books if you've also read them. I would love to know. And thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!